Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for sticking it out till the very last panel on the very last day of performance days. So welcome. We're going to be talking about unlocking the value of wool, something that's very close to my heart. I'm Delena White, Secretary General of the International Wool Textile Organization, and I'm going to be as quiet as possible and give our panelists who represent our industry a chance to speak to you today. And think about what you would like to ask them. We are here during the panel and also afterwards for questions. So we're going to kick it off with, to my right, Christine. You're representing Autovox today. Please tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Autovox, and also if you can highlight some of the most important focus areas in your group at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Dalina, and welcome everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Christine Brien. I'm head of materials at Autovox since September 2020, and I have a pleasure to really work with an amazing brand with amazing products. To be very honest, I've been in materials for a very long time. I won't tell you how long. Exactly. So what we're focusing on basically is we're focusing on what we're strong at. And I think this is something that is really important. And since the very first garment that we launched in the 1980s, which was actually a wool sweater, we have been relying on the amazing and really natural performance of wool. The breathability, the thermal insulation, the insulating properties, the breathability, and everything that comes into place. And when we build a product, this is what we rely on, and our consumers that use them in high altitude areas, and they really have to rely on the performance and function on it. So this is one very much focus that we have when we develop materials, but also develop products. The second one, for sure, is sustainability. And our sustainability, as we all know, is a very broad, a very wide range that you work into. And also here, I think it's important to understand where you have the most impact as a brand. And this is basically how you build up your long-term brand strategy, but also your long-term material strategy. So by establishing where we have the biggest impact on sustainable materials, and I'm not just going, you can read our Protect sustainability report and sustainability strategy online, but when it comes to materials, it's basically how can we make sure that we use renewable sourced materials like wool? How can we apply this also on the synthetics that we use as well in order to enhance the durability of our materials? And also, how can we make sure that we leave as little carbon footprint as possible, not only with our materials, but also working here alongside with our supply chain to make sure we find ways to reduce our carbon footprint.
That's a complicated cycle, and we know wool is not easy. It doesn't just come out of the well, but it was developed by the sheep over many, many years, and therefore you have all these sustainability aspects that you were speaking about. So in this context, how do you feel wool can support your buying plans and company strategy for the next season?
Kind of, in a way, it has always done that, because if you consider the value of wool, and if we talk about unlocking the value of wool, it doesn't come into play at a consumer's level. When you buy our products, when you use our products, when you look for a product for thermal insulation, when you need a product that really keeps you warm in rough weather and protects you, the value of wool is basically where it comes from. And this is coming from the sheep farmers and the sheep itself. And I think one thing that is really important and makes it extraordinary is a story that we can tell around. We cannot tell a really emotional story about synthetic materials. I'm sorry, that's just not what it is. But actually, I'm a big fan of our current marketing campaign. It's basically natural insulation, not made by Autovox, but made by the sheep and the sheep farmers themselves. And this is the story that we would like to tell. And particularly in this winter season that we've launched our new collection with a new umbrella called Meta Wool, which is basically a wool that we buy from farmers, from sheep farmers from southern Germany. And we really feel the value of that wool. And we met with those farmers, we talked to them, we listened to their concerns, but we also understood and learned the pride they have for such kind of a value product. And it was really important for them not to sell it off for a cheap price into other countries. They really wanted to have a product made out of it that is of value. And don't worry, I'm not going to make a big selling
Show
point
and
out
tell.
of this. But maybe just for you to understand, this material, this really super nice teddy fleece, is basically made from this wool from the southern Bavarian sheep farmers. So this is an amazing product that we've made also with a textile-to-textile recycled polyester yarn blend. So it's really made from renewable sources without any raw material use.
That is fabulous. That's a proper farm-to-shelf story. Thank you for sharing that. So, Andre, next to you, please introduce yourself and tell us what is your role at Sudvolle Group.
Yeah, thanks, Talina. First of all, thank you for having me. My name's Andre Herbst, and I'm the Sustainability Manager at Sudvolle Group since July of this year. But I've actually been with the company for 8 years now. Originally, my background is in textile engineering, which is why I also started more on the product innovation and development side of things. But over the years, I've transferred more into the sustainability side of things, since for us, innovation in many cases is also strongly linked to sustainability. And I've, for example, established the carbon accounting of the group and have been monitoring that for a long time. And so now, since July, I'm happy to have been given the chance to implement, monitor, and really drive sustainability initiatives across the group.
Fantastic. It's a mouthful. That's a big role. Well done. So in this context, making sustainability, as a sustainability manager, what would your number one focus be on this sustainability journey and the strategy that you have in Sudvolle at the moment?
That's not so easy to answer because, as Christine said, sustainability is a broad field. But for us, the lowering the carbon intensity across the wool value chain is certainly a priority. And I don't want to come across as being only in the carbon tunnel. But for us, decarbonization is really the foundation of our strategy, on which many initiatives that we have related to sustainability is based on. So I think that is a key element. And 5 years ago, we started to holistically calculate also the carbon footprint of the company. And then this really allowed us to identify the hotspots, the key emissions drivers that we have. And based on that, we were able to implement measures to lower the carbon footprint of our manufacturing operations. And we've achieved good results until now. And we have a roadmap in place, also mid to long term, how we can further reduce these emissions. But next to that, we have also we focus also on other areas, such as reducing the water footprint of the operations. Circularity, for sure, is a big area that we are investing into and that we do a lot of research in. So there's many areas. And also, what I think will become more important in the future is transparency, also along the supply chain, and will be a good challenge for me to make all that sustainability data also usable for brands like you, and to really tell that story across the wool value chain. For example, 3-4 weeks ago, I had a meeting with a sustainability manager from an Australian brand, and she was, since she's based in Australia, she was able to go on farm and see all the initiatives and all the great work that is being done on the ground there, which inspired her. But she said it can also be frustrating at times because it's sometimes so difficult to get all that information through the supply chain to then actually have an impact on the brand level in their sustainability report. So I think transparency and linked to that, of course, traceability will become more important.
Yeah, we keep getting those messages, transparency and reliable data for the brands to base their decisions on. It's important. So that makes sense. Francesco, ciao.
Ciao.
Please tell us who you are and what you do at the Woolmark Company.
Yes, thank you, Dalena, and good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Francesco Magri from Woolmark. The Woolmark Company, most of you know the logo, you know, the wool logo. What the Woolmark Company does is supporting actually brands, especially here in terms of innovation, finding solution for fashion, but here, for example, for sports, we have a lot of opportunities in terms of innovation. I am in the company for about like 10 years. I've been in the business for 25 years, mainly in apparel companies. So my ex-company are Levi's and Diesel, and actually, I mean, what we do in Woolmark is actually try to inform and educate, you know, the business about the benefits and the performance of wool. And with all the innovation we have, it is quite interesting.
So you are really interacting with the front side of the supply chain and speak to brands all the time. I've been watching your stand. It's been really busy over the past 2 days. So how do you think, in your opinion, can wool benefit the performance textile market? And can you tell us some of the examples in your recent innovations and research?
Well, yes, in terms of product, there are many innovation, and you can check in our stand just in front of the Wool Forum. I think that, I mean, what is interesting to tell you is especially something that could be useful, you know, for your brands and your consumer, if you're a brand. That is the research that we just did about the dynamic breathability. What does it mean? You know, I mean, sports is all about comfort. You know, it is all about thermoregulation. It's all about the breathability. So it is about the performance also of the fiber to increase the performance of the athletes. And so we did a research that we call it dynamic breathability, because it's a 3 years research that we did with the South Carolina University. And you can find all the specification and details on our website, woolmark.com. What is about, which is the difference, you know, between this research and the information that you and we have already on breathability. It is made on a dynamic situation. So especially in the stop and go sports, you know. So in the stop and go sports, just have I mean, most of you are doing sports. If you think when you ski, you know, you go down and your muscles are working, then you go up with the gondola, and it's very cold. Or, for example, when you are on a bicycle, mountain bike, you go up to the hill and then you go down, you know. So you go in terms your muscles are working, and then your muscles are relaxing. What happened is that the comfort of the athletes change, you know, when you stop and go. Because our body must keep, you know, the temperature, you know, to make the muscles work, even if when you are stopped, you know, when you're doing sport, and to keep your body's temperature, you are spending a lot of energies, so the performance of the athletes is decreasing, you know. So analyzing the stop and go is one of the most important information for the athletes for increasing the performance. And what we have seen, I mean, we made a test with 5 different fabrics: polyester, cotton, viscose, wool, 4 different fabrics, sorry, and wool. And we made 2 different tests. One was with the mannequins, the sweating mannequins. And we discovered that using the different fabrics with wool, you know, the temperature, the body temperature was kept more, you know, average, more than the other textiles. Just give you an example, is 96% more than polyester. What does it mean? It means that your body is using less energies to keep the temperature for the body ready for go when you stop. And then we did another research. Sorry, I'm not going in detail because otherwise we stay here for hours, but you can check everything on the website. And then we did another research that is about the comfort, because everyone wants to be comfortable, when you're sitting, when you are at home, when you're comfort is probably, the desire of also of athletes, because the more comfort they are, the better they perform. And so we did a research with many athletes, 10 different athletes, and we did a research of them doing sports with these 4 different fabrics. How was the test? They did sport for 45 minutes, and then they stop for 30 minutes. And then we did a qualitative research, Dalena, help me.
Ask them questions on how they feel.
Brava, grazie. We asked qualitative question. How was the comfort, during the sport and after the sport? During the sport, it was more or less the same, because you're doing sport, and so your temperature is rising, and you're feeling more or less the same. After 30 minutes of stop, the comfort was totally different. So with polyester, I'm not talking about bad about the polyester. I'm just talking about the research. With the polyester, they started having coldness, So they were feeling cold water on the body because the sweat was, was not taken away. Yeah, and then you have the results about the viscose, about cotton. And we discovered that actually the athletes were feeling more comfortable with wool. What does it mean? Is that if you want to make a performance garment, and you want to, and the athletes is looking for increasing the performance, probably wool is the solution, for helping increasing the performance of the athletes. Sorry, I've been too long, but the research was like that.
It makes sense, yes. Thank you. And then you've also done some research on farms. So that is something that Woolmark is both active on. So you're very much active in the development of fabrics and fibers, but you've also done some on-farm research. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I will be a little bit shorter.
No problem. You're Italian, we understand.
No, actually, this was the innovation, the research about the textile. But the innovation starts from the origin, starts from the farms. I don't know how many of you have been in Australia. Well, not too bad. And the farm in Australia are amazing, so they are really natural. They really care about the land. And so it's probably, we can say that it is the most sustainable place in the world, whatever. But the brands now, they have a need, in terms of reducing the carbon emission, especially into the supply chain. And so we are helping, this is the innovative, let's say, process that we are now developing together with, especially with the big groups, but also with the big, with a coalition of brands, is has the brands, they have to reduce the carbon emission. Now they are interested, to reduce the carbon emission also in the origin of the fiber. So we have created this program that is the Woolmark Plus. Woolmark Plus is just a framework about sustainability, and the specific project is called Insetting Program, is where we are connecting the brands together with the farms for finding solution in reducing the carbon emission. It doesn't mean that we ask to the sheep of not...
Don't poop so much, please.
Okay, I'm not going forward. But we help instead in finding solution for absorbing the carbon that is produced by any activity. So now we are connecting the brands directly to the farm in this action, like tree planting, increasing the biodiversity. So this is innovative, especially for the brands, because they are approaching a new system that is the origin of the farm. So they are going back and back in the supply chain, and we are facilitating brands in reaching the target in terms of carbon emission.
That's very interesting, and that ties in with what Sutwola was telling us. So we're going to have 2 more questions, and I'm going to ask Christine first to answer for us. Let's talk circularity. It was such a topic on this conference over the past 2 days. Is this an important topic in your business, and how do you see wool fit into what you're planning to do?
Yes, of course it is. I think circularity, but similar like sustainability, is a very broad field in itself as well. So if you break it down to wool, basically, it's still very challenging, to be honest, because the recycling of wool per se is not the problem. I think this has been done over
200 years?
Exactly.
Yep.
Thank you. But the quality of the recycled wool is still inferior. So what we face, and when we develop materials with recycled wool, because the staples and
Short
fibers
fiber.
exactly become much shorter. So it's very much due to pilling and abrasion resistance. And our aim at Otterbox is really, and this is what I said in the beginning, to create products that perform and also are extremely durable, because we believe if a product stays out there with the consumer as long as possible, this is one aspect of circularity, because it prolongs the product lives and the consumer keeps it as long as possible and not goes back every season. I mean, yes, like we do in short fashion, for instance, and buys a new one at the same time. So slowing down the loop is one thing that we want to make sure. But on the other hand, of course, we know that if you use recycled fibers, it reduces the carbon footprint for sure. But also, how can we make sure that we get a superior quality? And this is where we're a little bit stuck at the moment, or where we're investigating even further what we can do in order to get a better performance out of recycled wool. And I also appreciate, and especially because of the push to become more circular, more innovative projects arise. And I had also a lot of talks around here at this fair and other fairs as well about how to potentially also extract the keratin, which is basically a major component of the wool fiber, from wool waste and change it into something new. And this is something really exciting that we think it's really worth pursuing in the future, and also helps us to close the loop.
And that is so important, that we don't see recycling as a magic bullet to get out of, to deal with our fast fashion waste, but that we start with a foundation of good quality garments that stay in circularity longer. I think that's such a good example of real circularity. So Andre, same question to you. What's Sitwola doing in this field?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention in the introduction round is, because not everybody might know who Sitwola Group is. We are a worsted spinner focusing on 100% wool and blends with wool, so we're spinning yarn. And for us, circularity is a very important topic in our overall sustainability strategy. And we are, as you say, we have to distinguish in the wool spinning between 2 systems. So there's the woolen spinning using the shorter staple, and then there's the worsted spinning using the longer staple fiber. And if you recycle mechanically, you will always have a shorter staple of the wool. And therefore, we have a decrease in the quality. So we do a lot of research into how we can overcome that in our process using recycled materials. But we're also working together with startup companies, with universities on the chemical recycling of wool. So as you said, extracting the keratin and then trying to make something new out of it, which is, honestly speaking, also at the beginning. But we are also looking into that. And when we talk about circularity in wool, I think we shouldn't forget that wool as a natural fiber in itself is circular, as it's part of the natural carbon cycle. So I think wool is in a good position when we talk about circularity and recycling.
And that's also then very clear why they put a textile engineer in sustainability. That makes absolute sense, because you're looking at the technical innovation of circularity, which is great. So Francesco, what does Woolmark do with circularity?
Well, wool is one of the most recycled fiber in the world, and not because I'm telling this, but because the research say that. And well, Woolmark is also a certification of quality. When you see the Woolmark logo, this is not an advertising. When you see the Woolmark logo into the garments, it means that those garments are tested with specification by independent laboratories. It is not a business for us, but it's important to know. And now, I mean, to promote, let's say, to help, the circularity, especially the recycle trend, in terms of fabrics, we have just created a new certification of quality that is called Woolmark Recycle, where we certify the quality of the garment, because it is important to certify the fact that it's a recycled material, and we are, let's say, and there are a lot of many other certification bodies that are certifying the recycled. What we do is the quality. I mean, we test the quality of the recycled garments, the garments made with the recycled wool. And I think that it is important also for the consumer, because when you talk about recycle, sometimes it's okay, it is not the first choice, not the first quality.
Not perceived as quality.
Exactly, so we want to break the barrier and help the consumer in trusting in recycled in garment made with recycled fabrics. And so the Woolmark certification process with very tight specifications is helping. We are trying to help, I mean, the more is recycled, the better it is, of course, for the environment generally.
That's great. So there is a specific wool mark just for recycled wool garments.
Yes, and also here, not because I'm promoting, but if you want all the information, you can go on woolmark.com and you can get all the information about the certification. Then it's free of charge, I mean, especially for brands. But it's very tight on specification.
Perfect. So we're back on quality. That's nice. Okay, so our last question to all three. So start preparing your questions. Start thinking what you need to ask these experts. Our last question is something that's been taking up a lot of my time in Brussels and also of the people on the stage. In your view, how could upcoming EU textile legislation support your wool innovation? Give her a chance.
The second day is almost accomplished. The Performance Days team thanks every visitor, exhibitor, speaker, partner, and sponsor for a successful and friendly experience.
Great.
To all exhibitors, please do not fully dismantle or leave your booths until 5 p.m. Cars can enter the gate from 5:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're still here, right? Okay. So the question is, in your view, how could upcoming EU textile legislation support your wool innovation that you've been speaking about? Or is there a chance that it could create a barrier to business, a barrier to market, where you hope to sell more natural fibers? And we start with you again, Christine.
I mean, we just heard a lot about the CO2 footprint of wool, and we for sure are aware that this is a topic that we have to take care of. But like I said in the beginning, first we had to establish what is actually the impact. So what does the PAF methodology say? And that was very interesting because we started a trial saying, okay, let's have a look at it. And we used a software that was available on the market with a state-of-the-art methodology of the PAF CR method. And we started to play around. So we put in the very same criteria for a t-shirt product with the same weight, and then we started playing around a little bit with the different kinds of composition, and I learned that you did the same thing, just to get an understanding how the methodology works. And we put in a 100% textile recycled polyester shirt, a 100% cotton shirt, and also a shirt with a 20% wool and 80% tencel. So I can ask you now, which one do you think was rated the best? Was it the polyester shirt? Hands up.
We have some informed members.
Was it a cotton shirt? Or was it a Tencel wool shirt? Yeah, it was the polyester shirt. Still, can you imagine? And that was really an eye-opener for us. But at the same time, I particularly like to think into opportunities, not only in obstacles and challenges. So yes, the PEF is important and also important for our business. And we've heard now that also Wilmark is working on a better data basis. This helps us to improve the PEF score. We know we're looking into ways to include the biogenic carbon to be included into the PEF methodology. And also along the supply chain, we're working into solutions how to reduce the CO2 emissions along the way. But in the end, this might not be enough. But then, fair enough. On the other hand, if you consider wool, what you've heard about in the beginning, the performance of wool, the natural performance, you get an anti-odor function from the natural structure of the fiber of the wool, which you do not get on polyester shirts, for instance. So no additional chemical treatment is necessary. Also, if you compare a wool shirt versus a polyester shirt and you keep wearing it in high activity sports, you wash the wool shirt much less often than you wash the polyester shirt, isn't it? So here also you reduce the amount of water by using wool in your base layers or in your mid layers, especially when you do really high activity sports. And this is something that should also be considered next to biodegradability of wool. I could go on and so forth, but unfortunately these things are not being considered in the current PEF methodology, and I think this is something we should address and also highlight, because this would really help us also in the future to, it's just basically the consumers, how can you say, education and assessment and how to evaluate what is a sustainable product and what isn't. And I'm not sure whether it should really lead into a recycled polyester t-shirt being a more sustainable option over a wool shirt.
That is a frightening thought. Okay, so same question to you. What do you think is going to happen here with PEF?
I think the question that you asked was also if legislation can help or hinder the business. And if you look at all the legislation, and they often call it an avalanche of legislation that is coming, there are some parts of it that might help us, especially talking about circularity, talking about the EPR, the Waste Stream Directive, all these, lots of acronyms, of course.
Transparency in the digital passport.
Exactly, yeah. I think this can help to overcome some obstacles when we talk about recycling and putting the infrastructure in place to be able to really scale the recycling. But of course, on the other hand, talking about PEF-CR, and we have done the same exercise indeed, where we compared wool with 100% polyester and other fibers, which perhaps you also shouldn't do to make a one-on-one comparison, but it is true that the results that you get is it's mind-blowing. Yeah, you cannot comprehend.
It's
these
counterintuitive
results.
in a way, because if you ask most consumers what they find is good, natural or man-made, they would say natural, but it's the opposite in the methodology at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to account more for the environmental good that also wool production is doing.
That's an important point, is that the current LCA only count the environmental bad and not the good, and that's maybe one of the flaws, correct? And you, Francisco, at Wilmark, how do you see this play out?
Well, actually, Christina, explain perfectly. What we are trying to explain to the market, to the entire supply chain. That the PEF methodology now is not considering important elements like the microplastics and many others. And we are a founder of the Make the Label Count. There is a coalition of natural fibers that is created in Brussels, where you live. Probably in Dalena you can tell more.
Backyard?
Yes. And for us, it's one of the most important coalition for making the people in Brussels aware of what is the real important elements for us. Because microplastic is something that we can drink, we can eat, It's not just about business. It is all about our health. So this coalition, make the label counted, I suggest you to go and check on the website, is for us one of the most important investments that we do. But Elena, probably can you tell us more?
Thank you, yes, and thank you to Woolmark for being the founding member together with IWTO. It's been a journey, it's been a learning curve, and still today, when we meet some of the commissioners and members of parliament, they say, well, what are you doing here? You are from natural fibers, you have nothing to worry about. And that is just a misunderstanding of how a commercial standard has been incorporated into a methodology that now is earmarked to become a legislation or underscore legislation, which is really the concerning part for us. So to wrap up, yes, we've heard about what the chain is doing. Just from our side, we take the carbon discussion very seriously. We understand the pressures you're under. We are working on the IWTO Green Book, which will be available next year, June, and will include the first biogenic carbon LCA, which shows that the sheep is not only a burden on the planet, but it is part of a natural carbon cycle. And it is super important that we measure this properly going forward, or we will just steer the market into making more fast fashion and more textile waste, which is what we're trying to avoid. So Charles, this is sort of what we had to say. Would there be any questions from the floor?
Well, first I'd like the audience to show their appreciation for those guys on stage, because we've gone a stage further on this, and you need to attract my eye to ask questions. Otherwise I start pummeling them. We've got one to go with, but I want to chuck one in. Wool is now at a record high price. Talk about it, please.
Well, to stretch it to record, I won't go there yet. I think our farmers will disagree with that one. It is back to a level where in the UK, for instance, our strong wool farmers are almost covering the cost of shearing. So please don't think that they're buying 4x4 soon. It is not yet covering the cost of shearing, never mind the rest. On our finer wool market, it is reaching the point of sort of before people in Europe started firing at each other, so when we were still in a positive mode. But since then, our economy has taken a dip. The wool price dipped with it. But it was not only a wool issue, it was a textile issue. It has recovered over the past few weeks, and we hope it's the beginning of more recovery. But for this to be to the extent to keep our farmers on land, it would have to increase more, because our farmers are leaving the land. It is just not worth their while to farm with wool at the moment. So that is, the price is better, but it's not where we want it to be. Sorry, Charles. Question.
Thank you. My name is Gabrielle. I'm from Austria and from a project which is called Outwool. We are working for re-evaluating Austrian wool and working with Austrian wool. So my first question is, wool is currently 1% of the worldwide textile fiber market. So the first question is, how do you plan on making that percentage bigger, selling more wool, bringing more wool into the textile market? And also what you said, going to ensure that the farmers get paid a decent price, because they aren't paid a decent price at the moment. And the second is, I didn't quite understand the focus on recycling in the discussion now, because sheep have to be shorn once or twice a year. So you have a fresh supply of high quality wool once or twice a year, which is going to waste, most of it in Europe at least. So why not use more of the fresh wool? Why this focus on recycling? That's the second question.
And this is the point where I'm super happy to be the moderator. So I'm going to pass the buck, firstly, to you, Christine. Can you answer the first question on how the lady would like to know how you would increase your wool buy in Otterbox?
Well, you mentioned correctly that wool makes 1% of the actual global fiber production in general. And I think this question, we also have to go back to the farmers, don't we? Because we also see that the variation in wool pricing has a big impact on the sheep farmers. So we also basically rely on the availability of sheep that there is, and we've seen a decrease in sheep quite dramatically in the past. So this is one thing that you have to take into account. Is it worth to push for more wool? I think yes and no, because like we said, we don't want to increase dramatically, but we want the customer to buy sustainable and really for a better quality and really with a purpose of what he needs and not what he would like to have every single day all over new. So I think also educating the customer to really buy sustainably is something that is very important.
And that's an interesting conversation, is because when you look at that graph, the first 15 years of this century, we have doubled clothing and textile production. And more than 60% of that growth is in man-made fibers. So when we try to deal with our textile waste issue, it is turning consumers away from buying short-lived garments made from fossil fuel fibers into something that is renewable, biodegradable, recyclable, and will stay in the cupboard longer. And that is an angle to look at it in your business. And you, Francesco, how do you inspire all these brands that I saw over the past 2 days to buy more wool?
Well, actually, to buy more wool, to be more successful, with the product, that maybe wool can be a solution, can help. I talked to you about the benefit of doing sports with wool. So once also the consumer understands the benefits of wool, is asking for more wool, and of course then the circle is putting more wool into the system. Now our problem is that we need to take care that it's not going down, because sustainability is not just recycle things, but sustainability also is to keep I call the slow business of farmers, because wool doesn't come out from a machine, wool comes from sheep, and it takes time, it takes a very long time for taking care of the sheep. So if the market, because of this regulation, for example, these regulations, they are not regulation, is not asking for wool, these growers, these farmers are reducing the number of sheep, and the number of wool available in the market is reducing. So we need to be very careful to what to talk to the consumer about what is sustainability, because also sustainability to sustain this positive business, there are the farms where there are families, where they are taking care of the land. So we want to increase the presence of wool in the market, explaining and educating, but what is important is to take care of the farmers, of their families, of their land, because if wool disappear, one of the most sustainable fiber in the world disappear forever, because it is not out of our machine. We need to take care of that.
Thank you. And then the question on the recycling is always interesting. And I always think of a company in the UK called Wool Cool, and there are others that have developed insulation out of recycled wool. And they have amazing figures on their website about how much plastic they've taken out of circulation by simply sending your fish and meat and fresh produce to your door wrapped in wool. And afterwards you can put that wool around your veggie garden, and it's just a perfect cycle. The same for the terrible insulation that we're currently using that makes apartment blocks go up in flames, right? These things can be replaced by a natural fiber that can come from a recycled source. So there's so many innovations happening at the moment. It's exciting to watch it happen. But at the end of the day, as Francesco says, we need to take care of our farmers, and they need a sustainable price to keep them on the land. Any more questions, Charles?
I've been looking around, but no one's been trying to catch my eye. Otherwise, I ask them questions, and I'm a bit of a woolhead. So this is an opportunity for you to go in. And I'm not seeing questions. I am extremely fortunate. I've read Paul Swan's work up to now. I'm very curious. I follow fossil carbon, and I follow biogenic carbon. But at the end of the day, we have too much carbon in the system already. And when I speak to other people, they say it's not the type of carbon, it's the volume of carbon that we have. How would you defend the biogenic argument?
I think we come back to methodologies, and this is a topic that's been plaguing and plaguing me for 5 years and keeping me awake at night, is how we measure the impact of stuff. And as you said, Andre, in your business, you have to come up with proper data to make informed decisions. We believe we are not measuring the carbon from farms with small herbivores. So that includes goats and sheep. It includes very big parts of Africa where communities they farm on dry land. They have no other way of income. And we are telling them that they're burning a hole in the ozone. And we believe the methodology of measuring the impact of that carbon is not correct at the moment. And we have to follow science, and science evolves all the time. So we have not been measuring the carbon from small herbivores as a biogenic cycle. We're just measuring it as a one-way street up into the air. And we're not taking into account that it supports a circular system, and it has been for a very, very long time, even before we were here. So that's important that we get our measurements right and that we make our decisions on very reliable data and that we follow the science as it evolves. And that's the exciting part of this process, is to follow the science. And as you say, Dr. Paul Swan is leading that process for us.
Can I just bounce back a little bit? I know we need carbon. If we don't have carbon, the planet does not live. Without carbon dioxide, we don't get photosynthesis, we don't get growing plants. But people are talking it's the volume of carbon. And we know the additional volume is from fossil carbon. How can we sequester, how can we stop the excess of carbon? So I'm not debating biogenic carbon. We need biogenic carbon. If we don't have biogenic carbon, we don't have a livable planet. So I'm completely convinced on that. The point I'm trying to go on to is we have too much carbon. What else can you guys representing wool do to correct the sins of the fossil industry?
So that brings us onto a whole new topic that we can spend another hour on, and that is the topic
We've got time.
That's the topic of regenerative farming, and this is something that the science is really young on, and that's just starting to develop. But this is, I know the cotton industry is really making big strides in this area. And what they have found is when farmers take away the chemicals that they normally chuck on a monoculture kind of cotton field, and they bring the animals back to do it the natural way, firstly, the farmers can reduce as much as 50% of their input cost. And secondly, we increase biodiversity and we increase soil health. And that is the magical thing about carbon sequestration. We need healthy soil. We've been killing our soils with a lot of chemical input. We need to bring back the natural carbon cycle. And for that, we need small and big hooves on soil and actively bringing that carbon cycle back into our soil. And once you start digging into that topic, that gets really interesting, because what is below our feet has an incredible impact on the air above us and on our planet.
Before we go to this question, can I be cheeky enough to summarize? We have a solution that wool actively supports, and we're not using it, right?
Correct.
Where's the logic gone?
I come back to the roots. So, my name is Tanya, I'm from Portugal, and I'm quite new in wool, and it's something that actually, more than a question, as a consumer, one of the things that was bring me out of this material is the care of the material. And I think really I have a information about how to deal with how to relate with the whole. Probably some years ago, when our another generations, they knew how to handle it. I think we lost this information. And also, when I try today, I discover so much information about wool that give me a little more openness to try, because it's something that probably is more the value of is not the same price. And if someone will invest on that is with awareness, or for me it's like I will not invest so much money in something that probably I will lost, especially if I'm looking for clear colors. And clear colors means how to care it, how to clean it is something because normally they say temperature, you can put more than these degrees, but if I have a pen and I have something or a coffee, what's happened? And I think that still have some misinformation, or maybe create more programs about how to make people more close to these materials, how to introduce in the routine of cleaning, how to do it. I think this will help a lot that more people are interested in this material. Personally, it's something that seems years. I'm looking to that and always say, oh, but it's too complicated, or it's too expensive and they will not last. Probably I will, after a week, I will not have this anymore. This is beliefs, but I really believe that these beliefs are wrong. Just that I don't have the experience, and I think that many people, they don't have this connection with the roots, because actually we are speaking about something that is older than us. And before people was using this and was working, and probably that it was not so, the cleaning was not so effective as we have today. And I would like to explore more this, and actually to give more this, as a consumer, this input that this missing information. And today, this week, these days, I really make sure that I was wrong. This is why the information outside is wrong, and it will be nice to improve.
Easy Care Wool. You are after Easy Care Wool. So I'm going to start with the brand and then to you, because I know you've done a lot of work on this. Christine, how do you tell your consumers to care for their wool?
So first of all, thank you for your question. Maybe afterwards, I really would like to understand what a difficulty is you face when washing wool. Yes, you have to be a bit more careful. You have to watch the program. You have to watch the temperature for sure. But also the pre-treated wool, as we do it right now, it stops the wool basically from felting. So the wool as we have it right now, first of all, as I mentioned before as well, you don't have to wash it as often. That's the beauty of it, because you don't have the odors as you do with synthetics. So, I mean, I'm wearing a lot of wool. I do go a lot of running as well, and I prefer wool because it really helps with the performance, but it also helps with a less washing cycle. So I can confirm that you really don't have to wash it as often. But of course, you have to wash it carefully, yeah, in order not to have it shrink in the washing machine by the high temperature, and also you have to wash the spin cycles as well. You don't turn it up high, but if you follow the care labels, then you should be basically on a safe side. And also, if you look at the consumers' pages, also or the brands' pages as we have a very thorough indication how to wash and how to care the wool garments and the wool products, so that should help you. But afterwards, I'm happy to hear for you to answer all of your questions.
I can give an example to say curcuma, for example. If curcuma is how I say
curcuma.
Spice.
The
exactly.
spice.
For example, it's something that is if goes in the clothes is not so easy to remove, or a pen, a tint, or I'm saying not the normal use, but this specification is about, for example, if I'm using goat milk that have curcuma, is something that easily happens so much, or when I'm cooking, it's something simple, no, that we are using all day. I'm just giving an example, but in the kitchen we have a lot of ingredients that can easily be
You're
in the
looking about,
clothes.
you're talking about stains, actual stains on the
Yes,
garments. Yes.
something like this, that you just
Stain
remove it
removal.
with temperature.
Yeah,
And
I'm with you. You have something on that for consumer care?
You are totally right. You know, washability is one of the biggest barrier. Not only, I mean, it is in fashion because it is. In sport, it is even more because usually when you do sports, you wash your garments. Christina was totally right. I mean, wool you can wash less, much more less than the other fibers. But we didn't enough in communication, you know. So that's why, for example, in Woolmark we are planning for the next season a great campaign exactly on this, taking care about wool, because it's the first barrier. What we do in Woolmark, you know, for trying to break this barrier, is also collaborating with apparel care. You know, so we have also, I'm not promoting again, but we have another certification. There is the apparel care certification. I mean, there are some brands, not to do an advertising, like Electrolux or ANG, you know, where they tested the machines with us in independent laboratories for washing hand-wash wool, just hand-wash wool. So there is the opportunity to take care of wool easy. The only thing is that we need to do more, because I totally agree. This is the biggest barrier ever for wool, and especially in sport, where probably you're thinking to wash your garment immediately after you stop to do sport. So thanks for the insight, and we are happy that we will do something because it's something important.
From my perspective, my shoes are made from wool and tencel. I like them to stay as fresh as they look now. They're from a brand called Circle Sportswear in Paris. I use a normal stain treatment on them because I cycle with them in Brussels. I get them very grubby. And I use a normal stain remover on them, like I would use on any cotton or any other garment. And I wash them in the washing machine on a wool cycle, and they come out looking brand new. So sometimes people are scared of wool, of caring for wool, but it's not as sensitive as you think it is.
Exhibitors,
just to communicate more.
Second Fair
Exactly
Day
that.
is almost accomplished. The Performance Days team thanks every
Thank you so much for everything.
visitor, speaker, partner, and sponsor for a successful and friendly experience. To all exhibitors, please do not dismantle or leave your booths until 5 p.m. Cars can enter the gate from 5:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Sorry about that. We hope we answered your question, but we're here for more afterwards. Any more questions, or is it beer o'clock?
There's not beer o'clock today, unfortunately.
Oh, what a
Beer o'clock's only the first day. There are other shows that do not even have a beer o'clock.
I know, but you can find a beer in Munich for sure.
I can't see any questions, so Delena, do wrap up, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for staying until the very last end, just before you pack up your stand. A huge thank you to our panelists, Sutvolle, Ottovox, the Walmart Company. You are such amazing companies to work with, and we thank you for your time and your dedication.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.